Alright, let's talk about Crimson Desert. Look, after weeks with this thing and watching the absolute firestorm of opinions online, it's become pretty clear this is not a game built for the masses. And honestly, that's kind of the whole point. It's a massive, sprawling, ambitious open-world RPG from the developers of Black Desert Online. And it launched back in March of 2026 to some of the most divisive reactions I've seen in a minute. We're talking review scores all over the place, some people calling it a generation-defining masterpiece, and others saying it's a clunky, unfocused mess. What's wild is that both camps are kind of right, depending entirely on what kind of player you are. So instead of trying to tell you if it's good or bad, let's break down why this game was intentionally designed to filter out a huge chunk of its audience, and why that's totally fine. So let's just get the truth out of the way first. Crimson Desert is not interested in being a safe, crowd-pleasing open-world game. You know the type, the one that lights up your map with 30 icons, gives you a quest log full of bullet points, and holds your hand to make sure you never feel lost or uncomfortable. That is just not what this is. The designers here seem to have this almost stubborn approach to how you interact with the world. There is a noticeable lack of hand-holding, and instead of flashing waypoints screaming at you to go there, the game kind of just sets you down in the middle of this massive continent and sort of shrugs. For some players, that immediate feeling of not being told exactly what to do next is like a breath of fresh air, but for a lot of other players, it feels like the game just dropped them in the deep end and walked away. And honestly, that is the first big filter right there. You are either into that vibe, or you are going to be reaching for the power button within the first couple of hours. And yeah, about those first couple of hours, we have to talk about the pacing because this game does not come out swinging. If you are someone who needs that constant drip feed of dopamine from leveling up or finding a new shiny piece of loot every 5 minutes, Crimson Desert might test your patience in a way that feels almost personal. The early game is a certified slow burn. I am talking about a stretch where the narrative urgency is pretty low, and you are getting mechanics trickled to you through some fairly basic starter quests. Even Arcane Lion's studio boss pointed out that the magic kind of kicks in later. What's interesting is that this seems really intentional. The game is absolutely loaded with overlapping systems, from base-building economies to a combat engine that feels closer to a fighting game than a standard RPG. But it makes no effort to front-load all that cool stuff. The design philosophy here is pretty clear. You have to trust the process. It expects you to adapt to its rhythm instead of it adapting to yours. For a player who just wants to hop in for an hour after work and feel like they made some huge progress, that is a tough sell. But for the patient player who is willing to grind out those early hours, that payoff later on feels earned. Now, that whole design philosophy carries over into how you actually move through the world. The approach to exploration is probably the biggest filter of all. A lot of modern games treat exploration like a checklist, but this one is more about just wandering off because you saw a weird shape on the horizon. You can pretty much do anything you want from the very beginning, which sounds awesome until you realize that means you can also wander into areas where you have absolutely no business being and get stomped into the dirt by something with twice your health bar. That is the double-edged sword here. The game rewards curiosity, not the kind of directed, efficient pathing you find in other open-world titles. Some players are going to get lost in the visuals, spend an hour climbing a mountain just to see what the view looks like from the top, walking around the town, watching the NPCs do their thing, and feel like they are having a genuine adventure. But on the flip side, if you are someone who needs clear goals and a structured path to stay engaged, you are probably going to end up feeling totally aimless and disconnected from the world. That brings us to the combat and the systems because, not gonna lie though, this is where things get really deep. Do not go into this expecting to just mash the light attack button and win. The combat here has layers upon layers of mechanical depth. The true boss battle in Crimson Desert is often just wrangling the control scheme to unlock the cool stuff within. We are talking about moves that require 2 to 3 button combinations, directional inputs that change whether you perform a suplex or a throw, and an aerial juggle system that lets you keep enemies suspended in the air with well-timed chains. The game uses every button on the controller, and then it starts asking for button combinations. The devs have acknowledged that the learning curve is steep and that the controls are something you need to build muscle memory for over time. It is a system that is incredibly rewarding once it clicks and you start flowing between slides, jumps, and seamless attack transitions. But here is the thing. It is not instant fun. It asks for your time and your focus. For the player who likes to just drop in and have a power fantasy, this feels like a barrier to entry. But for the player who loves mastering a system, it is the main event, especially once they manage to perfect those combos with amazing effects. Another thing that sets this game apart is that it does not seem to be chasing that constant, high-octane excitement that defines so many modern AAA games. It is not afraid to let you have moments of downtime. And get this, you can find yourself just walking through the cities, admiring the details and the sheer visual fidelity of the place, without a single thing exploding or a gunshot ringing out in the background. There is a sense of realism and scale here that some people interpret as depth and immersion. They see those quiet moments of travel as part of the vibe, a chance to soak in the brutal yet beautiful continent of Pywell. But then again, that same design choice is exactly what another group of players will call emptiness or filler. If your brain is wired to expect constant action and a steady stream of rewards, you might just start wondering where the game is hiding the fun. It is less about the game being bad and more about what you personally value in your playtime. So we have laid out all the reasons why this game might push people away. Let's flip it around and talk about the type of player who is going to fall absolutely head over heels for this thing. The player who loves Crimson Desert is someone who thrives on discovery over direction. They are the kind of gamer who sees a lack of map markers as an invitation, not a flaw. They enjoy the process of slowly peeling back the layers of a complicated system, and they do not need the game to provide a constant pat on the back with new objectives. They are the ones who will spend 40 hours in Pywell and feel like they have only scratched the surface of what is possible with the sandbox tools and the combat engine. Basically, they are players who want to exist in a world rather than just be guided through a story. And in a weird way, this game feels like it was made specifically for them. And then, of course, you have the other side of the coin. The player who is going to bounce off this game and drop it by hour 5 is just as valid in their feelings. That is the player who needs clear, well-defined goals and a sense of narrative urgency pulling them forward from the very first cutscene. They prefer fast onboarding where you are in the action and feeling powerful within minutes, not hours. They are looking for those immediate payoff loops where a 30-minute session still feels like you accomplished something significant. There is nothing wrong with that. That is just a different type of engagement, and that is exactly the point this whole video has been building toward. Not liking Crimson Desert does not mean you are bad at games or you do not get it. It just means the core design philosophy of this particular world is not aligned with how you personally find fun. It is more about the fit between the player and the design. So here's the final thought to bring it all together. Crimson Desert is not a game that is trying to make everyone happy. It is not that kind of product. It is built around a very specific vision of engagement that values patience, curiosity, and a willingness to learn its unique language. It sold millions of copies and has a huge fan base, but it is also a game that you will see some people put down and never pick up again. And you know what? That is completely fine. Not every piece of entertainment needs to be a catch-all for every possible audience. Sometimes the best experiences are the ones that know exactly what they are and who they are for, even if that means leaving a lot of other players behind. If you decide to dive into Pywell, just know what you are signing up for. It is a slow burn with a steep climb, but for the right kind of adventurer, that is exactly what makes the view from the top worth it. Anyway, that is pretty much my take on why this game is not going to click for a lot of people, and why that is perfectly okay. If you are one of the players who has already put in the hours and you have gotten past that initial learning curve, let me know down in the comments what your turning point was. When did the game finally grab you? And if you are still on the fence about picking it up, I hope this helped you figure out if you are the right kind of player for it. Thanks for hanging out, and I will catch you in the next one.